and welcome to my show, The Neal Report. My report is about local heroes around North Carolina. Now, there's a lot of them, especially during COVID time. Today, I'm going to bring you 3 what I consider local heroes because what they are doing, what they have done. And I would love for you to hear their stories. In my opinion, I think we are all products of our environment. But these 3 men, all very individual in their own way, all came from a very different background, have one common thing. And that is they believe in their community, they believe in helping the community, and they still believe in mankind. Now that says a lot, especially in today's world. But I want you to listen to their story from their humble beginning to where they are now. I want you to listen to their various way of describing what their life was like. And instead of becoming a statistic, they actually made something out of themselves. Now, everybody have different influences. You will hear their mentors and the advice that they follow to get them to where they are today. I am so excited, and I hope you will enjoy listening to their stories, and in hopes that you realize that we are all common in one way. So join me in listening to the 3 wonderful heroes on The Neal Report. Our first guest is very interesting, to say the least. He's very well known in Charlotte and a few other areas in North Carolina. It amazes me that somebody like himself decided to step away from what would have been a very comfortable life, working hard for the people. Why he does what he does in order to make the world better. I know that's a common or an old-fashioned ideology. Oh, I want the perfect world. But there's a difference between saying it and doing it. Let's listen to his story.
Good afternoon. My name is Willie Fleming, and this is my story.
Imagine living a life as a road manager to one of the hottest R&B groups back in the day, Archie, Bell and the Drills. Living a life as Sheila E. would have sang, the glamorous life, to being a pillar of the community, tirelessly working with the power at be to help his community elevate to a better level. What life experiences did he have to do what he's doing today? Did somebody in his circle influence him to become active in his community? How did a person from a very different lifestyle change to become such a pillar of his community where, unlike his music world, has very little monetary rewards and no shortage of need? Did his family support him? As you can see, his mantle has no shortage of who's who. Well, whatever he's doing, he must have been doing it right, because he received one of the highest honor a governor can give to a citizen, the Order of the Longleaf Pine. Family plays a big part in any civic leader's life. In many ways, Willie is no different.
I was born in Lake Norman in a city called Mooresville. Moores is the race capital of the United States. They call it the race city. And also Lake Norman is the lakes, the racing was really what made up Mooresville. It was fun, it was a small town, and everybody knew everybody. So we didn't have a lot of the problems that you would normally have with larger cities. We was a close-knit family. My mom, my dad, my uncle, my aunts, my grandmother. So it was close-knit type thing in Mooresville. I think mostly is the fun that we had playing out at night till the light came on. The friends that could come and spend the night, getting a car that you used to race, going to the lake and go swimming and fishing. So those are things that really stood out. My music teacher and my French teacher. Well, I got in the band when I was in the 5th grade, and I really liked music, and my band teacher was from the 5th grade till my senior year. And in the 9th grade, I was the assistant band director of the high school band. And that was good. I think Reverend Miller was my French teacher. He was a senior homeroom class. And I think what I remember most about him is he encouraged me to not have so much fun and settle down. I could do the things that he believed I could do when I grew up. He encouraged me a lot. That was my grandmother. She said, always learn the basics, focus, and make sure that nobody can take the dream away once you get the basics, but you had to have the basics. You know what you're talking about. Well, I was the oldest of 7 kids, so you learn it pretty quick when you got 6 brothers and sisters. I went to Mitchell College and Rutledge College, and that was a double major in business administration, sales, and marketing. Well, I didn't. I got married early, so I didn't stay on campus. I think the thing of that, and I remember most of the first 2 semesters I made the dean's list. Student government. I was just on the council. I got on it because a friend of mine said, "Hey man, come on, you need to get on this. We'll have some fun." But it was interesting. I learned that the student government basically should be something that made sure the students and council and the facilities work together. And the problems that we had that came up, we could present them to the professors and the deans and stuff, and to council. Focus on studies and not on fun. As I said, I got in the band when I was in the 5th grade, and I liked music. And once I got to be the assistant band director, my high school band director left, and we got a new band director. Her name was Penny Robinson, and she had a band, club in Hickory called the Dynamics, and she also had a band called Dynamics. And when she came to the band, she asked me and walked before them to come and try out for her band. So I played with the Dynamics when I was in the 9th and 10th grade. Oh, wow. I was telling a friend of mine, being in the nightclub business, you go to work early, you set up, it's always, the clubs are different when you first get in as they do when the lights come on and people start to come in. I think the nightclub business is like a movie to me. You go in, the whole purpose of the nightclub is for people to enjoy themselves and have fun. So, matter of fact, we focus on having live music. I didn't want to just do the DJ. And we'd have live bands coming at least twice a month. And Archie Bell came over and brought his manager with him about doing a show there. And I remember him back in the day when he had Tighten Up and some of his hit records. And we became friends. As a matter of fact, I was his road manager for almost 2.5 years. Well, in the band, in the Diplomat Lounge, I had 13 models, because we had a modeling agency there. The ladies would train and rehearse inside the club, and I also had a house band. So when I met Archie, we took the band, they learned his music, and the models would open up a show, so it was called AB Production. And we traveled to Georgia, to Virginia, Maryland, and we did shows together. That was fun, We used to rent a bus. It was kind of like a school bus. It was all fun though, we went up and down there and it was fun. I enjoyed it. Take it seriously, but have fun with it. You have to enjoy music. If you don't enjoy it, if you do it as a job, it won't be as good to you, so it won't be as good for you. Well, I worked at Duke Energy for a while, and Duke Energy passed me over for promotion after I think it was third time. I said, well, if I don't get the job this time, after it's been promised to me, I'll leave. And as soon as I got vested in the company, I think it was one day after I got vested, I came up and said, I'm gone. And I wore a three-piece suit to work, drove my little sports Mercedes. I knew I wanted to do something on my own, so I left there and got into the insurance, financial service industry. And well, I don't think so, because I still had the nightclub, so I like people. And I was able to, I've always been a people person, I believe. So in the financial service business, you meet people and you had to negotiate and get people to believe. And again, that was my major. Get people to believe that you had the best solution to their problems. So, no, I enjoyed it. Believe in yourself. Study your whatever product or service you have. Study it. Talk to people that's already doing it, and realize that it's not going to be easy as you start off, but be dedicated to it. My brother died of cancer, and at that particular time I was living in the Bahamas, living in Nassau. And once he got sick, I came home, and for almost a year while he was going through that, the chemo, and I seen my brother come down. So almost a year after that, I kind of did nothing. I wasn't mentally prepared to do anything. And I knew I had to do something. So I started in the political system. I met Rodney Moore and Janelle Gregory. And they talked me into being a precinct chair, and I organized Precinct 95. I got in, I started enjoying people, and it was a challenge to me. And I wanted to try to make sure I could, be effective doing it. NAACP. Well, it all came, it was in the same school of thought, I believe, in the same NAACP fight for rights of African Americans and minorities, and so was the Democratic Party. So it kind of linked together. I first became the chair of Mecklenburg County's African American caucus, and there was a Hispanic caucus. It was the Hispanic caucus of Mecklenburg County, and I noticed that Phyllis Alexander was the president, and I talked to her. I said, listen, we need to get together, minorities get together and go into the park, and this time, celebrating together. So we started what we call the Coalition Cookout. And I think that was in like 2010 maybe. And I just thought it was a good idea for minorities to come together and work together and party together, and have a good time together. And it worked. I saw what it meant for minorities to come together in different countries and different languages. It created what I thought the world should look like. It's minority, everybody, black, white, brown, coming together. And I felt that minorities working together would create a platform that we could really pursue the gaps that happen with minorities. That's where I live. That's where my kids live. That's where my grandkids live. That's where my friends live. And it's the old saying, if you believe in something, work towards it, making it better. And that's what I believe in. The vision. I think that if there was people came together and worked as a unit, we wouldn't face a lot of problems we face today. You got to think about it. Wars is because disagreements and people not working together. In the black and African American communities, a lot of time we don't work together. And I think now with the International Minority Coalition, people believe that we've come together from all over the world to create that camaraderie that we need to make to bridge the gap that exists for minorities. This world has never been in history a time like it is now, and especially for minorities. We got somebody, yes, I'm saying somebody in the White House that doesn't believe that minorities are as valuable citizens in the United States. The top 1% is only 1%. The rest of it is 99%. And that's what we focus on, the 99%. It's to come together, bring minorities together, to speak with one voice, to help bridge the gap that exists with minorities. And the 4 areas that we look at is economic, social, educational, because those are areas that, and political, those are areas that really separate us from the mainstream. You know, if you get economic success, you can solve a lot of those other 3 problems. But politically, has to be solved. We vote for people and they don't deliver on their promises. Educational, we need to make sure that our school can grow and help our young kids today to be successful in life. Socially, we want to make sure that we're not outcasts as social. So we come together and make sure of that. To believe in what you're doing, to be true to what works and don't work, and be able to fight to endure the ups and downs, because there's nothing going to be, I'm a start organization that's going to, everything's perfect. There's going to be trials and tribulations that you have to overcome. So you really got to believe in what you're doing.
Amen. My next guest is a very, very fascinating person. Now, I want you guys to listen to his humble beginning. Because when I interviewed him, I didn't know anything about him. I just knew he was a district court judge. But I didn't know anything about him except that he is absolutely a very nice person. But when he was going through talking about his life, I was in awe, because he was one of those person that took a negative and turned it into a positive and kept going. And not to mention, he's so humble about it. So I'm not going to talk too much. I want you to listen, and then we'll come back and talk about what he said. And also, more importantly, all those who may be facing family court or who's going through some personal issues with mental health or family crisis, there's some tips that he has said on this interview that I think you might be interested. So let's listen.
Hello, I'm Rex Marvel, and this is my story. I was born in Wichita, Kansas. I was born there. My parents, they struggled a bit. My mother was a high school dropout. My dad was in the military, and that's really what brought him there. He worked as a machinist at the Boeing military company. But my mother, dealing with just abuse and instability in her household, had an addiction and struggled with that her entire life. It took her a long time to beat that. But with that addiction and with those struggles, my family had to move a lot. We went to a different school every single year of elementary school due to the instability in the household. Ultimately, the courts were involved. Again, because of my mom's addiction, she had issues in criminal court. The family court system was brought in, and eventually her parental rights were terminated. At that point, we moved to another state with our family being the support, and that was to Florida. So I ended up in Florida. I finished high school there, went to college down there at Florida State, and that's my where I'm from. My dad was in the Army. During the Vietnam War, he was stationed in Germany. He was a little luckier that I have uncles that were in Vietnam, but my dad was fortunate that due to some testing and things, he was able to work in Germany. Oh no, I mean he was out of the military by the time I was really aware of anything. He worked as a machinist on airplanes at the Boeing military company, so They make this refueling plane called a KC-135. For some point he had worked on parts and things that went into Air Force One. But he's a machinist, and his last job was not too far from here in South Carolina, in Charleston. He was working at the Boeing company down there, and as a machinist, he spent a little bit of time up in Greensboro and the Triad working again on airplanes. But you learn as a family court judge as well. Kids are strong and they adapt. You're not aware of everything as a child, as far as that your life is any different than anyone else's. It takes a little while as you get older before you realize that not everyone has issues with their parents being arrested. Not everyone has issues with their instability or moving that frequently. But certainly as a teenager, that's something that affects you. It does bring some anger in, and I frankly see that in court all the time. That's why I'm trying to be as patient as I can with the families that I serve, because as a judge you need to be able to listen and learn and truly understand the family before making a decision. Well, I studied religion and that was an undergrad. I always thought that being a lawyer or being a judge is a way to make the world a better place. Through the issues that we had in my house, my cornerstone in my life was always my grandmother. She kept us going to church. I lived with her for long periods of my life, and she made sure that we sang in the church choir, the youth choir. She made sure that we went to mission trips and did things with our church. So that stability kind of led me to continue to think about ways I could help the world and make the world better for other people. That kind of brought me to studying religion, as I mentioned before. But ultimately I thought that being a lawyer, I could advocate on behalf of people. I understand that things in the world are not black and white. There's a lot of gray. Even someone that's committed a crime, even if they've done something bad, there's a story there. There's a reason why they ended up there. As far as the civil courts and the family court situation, same thing. There's a story behind everyone, and you need to take the time to listen and understand to give justice and be just. The example that my grandmother always gave me, just kind of showing me that even if things are hard for you, it's harder for someone else. Making sure that as a child that we went to those mission trips, we could see, that, sure, I lived in a trailer park, but, we'd go with our church to help after a tornado would hit someone else's trailer park or someone else's home. And even though you might not have a lot of earthly possessions, you at least have something. It kind of puts things in perspective. We went to a trip once in high school to Juarez, Mexico, and I saw people that were trying to come into the United States that were living in, houses made of essentially loose material, cardboard, sheet metal, just whatever they could find, and it was in a garbage dump that they were living. And I mean, again, it puts your life in perspective. You can complain about the shortcomings that you have or the difficulty that you have, but someone's always had it worse. And the real thing to do is not to compare what you have or you don't have. It's just to try to make the world more just and fair and help your brothers and sisters. I mean, that's what I was always taught as a child, and again, from my grandmother's perspective, and that's what I've tried to do as an adult, and that's what I try to do as a judge. So I worked a lot in high school and in college. I had an opportunity to work at the Botswana Court of Appeals, working for a judge in Africa. And so I did what was called death penalty reviews. So in that country, if you are accused of, or you committed a crime of murder, you are sent to essentially death penalty. So the judges have law clerks like I did at the time, and we would look into the record and look into their background and their history, and we were trying to see if there was any mitigating factors that would warrant taking them off of the death penalty and off of death row. And then from that, I was able to get a fellowship through what's called Equal Justice Works, which is kind of like AmeriCorps or Peace Corps for lawyers. And that brought me here to Charlotte to work at the Public Defender's Office.
So how
I love it. It's my home now. My two boys were born here. I live here. I have my homes here. My sister lives here now. She's got a family and starting a family. This is my home. Well, I'll say one thing that I carry with and I think about a lot. Due to my mother's addiction, as I said before, the courts had to intervene. I have a younger brother who's my half sibling, and his father was in prison at the time my mom was in kind of her last run-in with law enforcement, which got my family to really be involved with the court system. And seeing him in the foster care system, seeing that my own father, my dad, my birth dad, didn't have the financial means or ability to take care of my little brother, seeing that his family, my little brother's family, was incarcerated, and just seeing that the government had to step in at that point, it's a heavy thing. It's a heavy thing as a child to see. It's a heavy thing as an adult or a judge to see. And I just, again, as a judge, you need to be patient and mindful of everything that you're doing. Just be aware that the decisions that you make impact children and impact people's lives. And it's not just the one individual that's in front of you. It's not just that one parent that's struggling with addiction. It's not just that one parent has the criminal matter. You know, you got to understand as a judge, you're making an impact on a whole community. Pre-COVID, I did a lot with Urban Ministries, which is now called Roof Above. So my church has a partnership with them. We'll work in the soup kitchen every month. I like to cook, so I like to do that. But we've been working through COVID to try to make sure that they have sandwiches every week to help people that are reliant on them. So the tent community that you know is growing around the Urban Ministries, so we make sure that they have food. I do a lot with a bar. I sit on the board of directors of the Mecklenburg County Bar. I used to be on the Community Service Board, and we do Know Your Rights sessions. And I've been doing that since I moved to Charlotte. So I go to like Garinger High School. I've gone to other nonprofits. Recently during COVID, I did a Know Your Rights session for homeless teenagers at this organization called The Relatives. And so again, it's just trying to educate kids so they understand what their rights are, what their Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment rights are, and understand and try to help them learn how to effectively communicate with law enforcement if they're ever in that situation, how to essentially stay out of trouble, but how not to escalate a situation if they find themselves, irritated that they're stopped by police. It's it's a difficult thing to ever have that interaction happen to you, and unfortunately those kids, in my opinion, if you're a homeless teenager, that's the most vulnerable population in our community, and unfortunately we have a pretty sizable number of homeless teenagers. So what little I can do is just try to help educate them and be there to answer questions that they might have and help them understand what their rights are. But again, I could say that the system takes a while to move. The court system, especially in the family court system, it's not done in a month. It's not done in 2 months. It's not done in 3 months. And part of the reason that it moves slowly is to see how that family's evolving and try to work things out for them the best you can. Because if, for example, in a hypothetical situation, if a family splits up, you go straight to the judge and just say, all right, we're going to do week on, week off, and we're done. We're done. That might not serve the family, because not everything's one size fits all. Everyone's different. Everyone's situation's different. Everyone's story's different. And everyone's dealing with something, be it addiction, be it, struggling with a mental illness, struggling with a health issue. I mean, everyone's going through something, and it's part of the job of a family court judge to understand that and try to support that family so they can leave in a better place than when they came to the court system. I talk to parents struggling with addiction all the time. I mean, that's part of, what brings so many families to the family court system or to the court system. And I can just say I understand that, addiction is an illness, but the most important thing you can do is remember that your child is there. It's easy when you're struggling with that addiction, especially if it's in that, that highest stages where there's constant triggers, you really can't break it. Focus on your child as your light. Focus on your child as a way to try to get better. And again, when you have that addiction, it's a disease that's never going to leave you. I get that. But if you can focus on the positive things about being a parent, focus on your child, hopefully that can pull you out of your addiction. And if it doesn't, you at least, again, are still involved in your child's life in some way. And the courts talk about all kinds of ways that they can still involve people that are struggling, even still involve people that are homeless. That doesn't mean you're going to have your parental rights terminated. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have visitation. But hopefully, as a parent struggling with that, you can focus on your child and again, rise above and hopefully overcome that illness of addiction. I mean, I'm a father first and foremost. I mean, that's something that changes anyone's life. And I love being a dad. I love everything about being a dad. You know, as I said, I'm a judge. I certainly feel that I'm in my role, that my calling, this is where I was meant to be. I'm happy to help our community as a judge. I'm a husband. You know, when I'm at home with my friends and family, I love to cook for my friends. I love to cook for my family. I'm a Panthers fan. I'm a Florida State Seminoles football fan. That's who I am. You know, honestly, judges are regular people, and we all have our own path, just like anyone else. And you know, all I can say is that path that I have, any difficulty I've overcome, my faith in God has brought me here. And again, I'm just happy to serve in the role that I'm in.
That is very fascinating. And amen. What a wonderful story. Thank you, Judge. And I tell you, we need more of you up there. My next guest is very familiar to me. And the reason I'm putting him on here because I have personally witnessed him standing alone, fight for everything that he believes in and for the community. Let me just say, I am not a fan of the politics. I'm not a fan of politics. I'm not. I can't stand politics. But I realize that it takes a special person to be in that field, to have the genuine fight, the drive, even though the reward is not really all that great sometimes. And you get a lot of folks who may have differences of opinion throwing stones at you and, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff. You have to have a thick skin. I don't have a thick skin. I have thick skin in other things, but not in politics. But this next guest has, and the story is he was one of the very lucky few that has a lot of great mentors, which he is going to share. And it didn't start from when he was in his 20s or 30s. It actually started when he was, before he was born, actually. Something had happened. He always shared that with you. And after he was born, the people around his life, just the day that he hit Mother Earth has been unbelievable. He's one of the very lucky few that was blessed to have so many folks around his life that encouraged him, that supported him. And I personally know myself to have a parent. Now I have two parents, but he particularly was raised by one parent, but she was a powerhouse. And I'm going to let him explain to you his life, all the details, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Hi, my name is Rodney W. Moore, and this is my story. I was born in Wilmington, North Carolina. Well, Wilmington is a beautiful place. It has a lot of history, some good history, some dubious history, but it was a great experience growing up. My mother and my family had a very, very loving and good childhood while I was in. The city had some challenges, of course, because I grew up around the middle of the end of the segregation and civil rights movement coming about. So there was some tension in the city, but for the most part, everyone got along, black and white. We became more of a community after the 70s, and so it was great. I have no complaints about my childhood. Well, it was very, very diverse. Met a lot of good friends, on black and white friends. We were very, pretty well integrated. It was just a peaceful experience for the most part. Of course, there were some tensions at times, but that's just in the normal flow of any school. But it was a pretty good school, and we got along fairly well. Was a participant in ROTC, Navy Junior ROTC. Started that process when I was in the 9th grade at my junior high school, and then transitioned on to John T. Hoggart. Stayed there and became battalion commander, first black regimental master chief, petty officer. And so it was a good experience. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about discipline myself, learned about achieving goals, and I learned a lot about leadership. Became one of the battalion leaders, the regimental master chief, excelled, was on the color guard, the drill team, the rifle team. It was just a lot of activities that I could engage myself in that experience. So I took full advantage of it. Well, one of the things that sets out in my mind from 40 years later is the fact that we had an inspection going on with the captain, the Navy captain that comes down from Charleston, or came down from Charleston every year to inspect our ROTC group. And so I was a junior. I was, like I said, I was a regimental master chief. I was on the regimental staff, and so they wanted to move me from a regimental master chief to a battalion master chief without any particular reason why. I didn't do anything. There was no disciplinary action. And so what I did was I fought against that, and I organized a boycott of African American cadets. Threatened to boycott that particular inspection if I was not reinstated in my rightful place as the regimental master chief. The name of the fraternity that I came up with was Omega Phi Beta. It was based off of an affiliation of some friends that I had in the college fraternity, Omega Psi Phi. And so we wanted to kind of interact and interface with them on the high school level, and so we came up with the name and the frat Omega Phi Beta. Well, because the plain and simple fact was that my mother raised me as a single parent, and even though we had a lot of family support, she needed help, and so that made me go out and try to look for ways that I could help her, and insurance and mortgages and those things on a sales position was a good opportunity to network, build up the capacity of my business, and to help her out in some way.
Yeah.
Oh, she told me that she ran into Malcolm X when he was in the Nation of Islam, and Malcolm X would have this practice of trying to attract young mothers and married couples into the nation at the time. And so what happened was she was about 6 months pregnant, and Brother Malcolm said to her that she had a male child in her belly, a leader of his people in her belly. And so he actually touched my mother's belly, and the story that she gave me was that I kicked at him. Or yeah, I kicked at him when he touched her belly. But that resonated with me because it really made me understand the purpose and the mission that I have, as far as being an example and a leader for our people in this community. Well, my mother got involved with the Eastern Stars in the Masonic Order when I guess I was about 6 or 7 years old. She rose up very quickly to the rank of Grand Matron in an affiliation called Modern Free and Accepted Masons. Her and her cohort, Wendell Daniels, he was the Grand Master, she was the Grand Matron. And so they tried to run for Supreme Grand Master and Supreme Grand Matron, and they were blocked. And so what they did was they stepped out on faith and they started their own Masonic organization, bodies of Eastern Stars and Masons, called United National Free and Accepted Masons, which is a part of that organization. Is still in existence and is headquartered down in Wilmington, North Carolina. Oh yes, I was involved with Masons at a very early age, as far as being a junior Mason, or what they call the Legion Mason, interacting with that and traveling with my mother and just getting to know her, the excitement that she had and her brothers and sisters had for Masonry. So that's how I got involved. And I joined when I was about 25 years. Well, Johnson's Grocery was a grocery store that was founded by my grandfather and my grandmother back in the early 70s, and it was there to provide food choice, if you will, to a neighborhood that was close by, a housing project, public housing project called Gervais at the time. And so after they worked it for about 10 years, and then my uncle, Robert Johnson, took over the helm of the store, and so he's been at it for almost 40 years now. That legacy, if you will, still continues. Yeah. Well, Wendell Daniels was my mother's best friend. He was also the Supreme Grand Master of United National. He has another title that's very long, Most Puissant Sovereign Grand Commander. And so Wendell was sort of like a surrogate father to me when I was growing up, and really kind of lead through his example to let me see how possible entrepreneurial space would be, and how important it is to build wealth sustainable wealth among your family members, so that each generation can keep moving forward. So, very influential person in the makeup of who I've become as a man. Well, I've always had an interest in affordable housing. Prior to being appointed to the Charlotte Housing Authority, I was actually the housing chair for the NAACP, and so I went to a lot of affordable housing forums, testified in front of the Housing Authority and neighborhood services with the city of Charlotte, really advocating for affordable housing and helping these residents go from dependency to self-sufficiency. But I've been involved with community all of my life, even as a young child in Wilmington, growing up in the church, understanding the values of helping your brother out in time of need, being involved with different organizations like the Masons, like the NAACP, which I was a youth member from the age of 7 and 8 in Wilmington. And so all of those things just kind of culminated in my strong and deep involvement with the community. It's almost just a part of it. Well, my mother had, it was a young lady who was homeless, or who was, well, actually she was not homeless. What happened was she was an abused spouse. And so sometimes she would flee from her spouse, and she would come over to my mother's house, And I would wake up some mornings and I would see her on the sofa bed with her daughter. And so it really made me understand the importance of taking care of each other. It also made me a zealot against any form of abuse, domestic or otherwise. And so I understand that the housing issue as well. So she needed a safe space and a safe place. And so that's what my mother provided for her when she moved. I was influenced by people in the community that I saw that were politically active at that time. I grew up around the early 70s. And so there were especially African-American politicians in the city of Wilmington who were moving and running for office and making some positive strides. I can just name a few of them. Senator Luther Jordan, which was a mentor and a role model for me growing up in Wilmington. He ran for city council for quite some time. He finally didn't make it a couple of times. He finally made it. He served 16 years as a city councilman, and then he moved on to the North Carolina Senate. And he served 12 years until he passed at a very early age. Also, Brother Kojo Nantambu, who ran for mayor of Wilmington, which is unprecedented at the time for an African American or a black man to run for mayor of the city of Wilmington. Of course, even though he was unsuccessful in his run, he really stoked the fire inside of me that it's possible. Anything is possible if you put your mind to it. And so that's how I got influenced politically. Well, the first run I ran in the year of 2010. It was a year after this. The next cycle after the historic win of Barack Obama to the White House. And there were people who were prodding and pushing and coaxing me to run because they thought that I would be a good candidate. My intention in that race was to really just get my name out there because my goal was, at the time, was to be on Charlotte City Council. And so I figured, well, I'll do this race and build my name ID up, and then on the next cycle, I'll run for City Council and I'll win. But the universe and the ancestors and others had a different plan, and so I won that primary, and subsequently I won the general election by a landslide, and I served 8 years in the State House in Raleigh. Well, the most challenging thing is being in the minority caucus. You really don't have a lot of leeway to really push positive legislation or have influence. And so what I found was that I had to spend more time building relationships on every side, whether it was my caucus or the Republican caucus, because that's how you pass laws. That's how you get initiative. Is that you have to build relationships with everyone, even those who would not naturally agree with the things that you want to advocate for, because you have to build those relationships so that you can have a fighting chance of getting any legislation through that's going to have a positive effect on the people. Just have the passion, the will, and just go out and do it, and try to make a difference, and just be true to yourself no matter what. Breathe, exercise. Just don't, you have to have your mental quality about you, and so that means that you have to really exhale. You really have to put things in its proper priority and just deal with them in the priority that they're in, because a lot of times you can have things that seem like they're so insurmountable, but when you step back and you think and you recalibrate your thinking, it's a very solvable situation that you might think is a mountain that's really a molehill. No, never that. I've done it all my life, and a lot of the things that I've pushed for in the General Assembly and some of the organizations that I've been involved with, no, never been afraid to stand alone. I came alone, so sometimes I have to stand next year. And so we're just doing whatever we can do from an entrepreneurial standpoint and from a standpoint of helping the community every way we can. Those things are what I'm doing.